Okay, good day, dear all dear followers of the World Bioeconomy Forum, dear insiders of the bioeconomy world. Good day to all. You are all welcome to this second World Bioeconomy Roundtable of the season 2023. This time we will focus on Africa. My name is Jukka Kantola and the founder of the World Bioeconomy Forum. So you are all welcome to this occasion. Today looks like we have a registration from 30 different countries, and no surprisingly, majority of them are coming from Africa, namely South Africa, Namibia, and Kenya. But we are also having many registrations from US, Canada, Brazil, Germany, all important countries for the bioeconomy. So I would say quite wide range of participants. We are pleased to have us with today. Please note, as always, we are recording this roundtable. So if you miss this, you can always have a look at that from the YouTube channel, and we will publish that within the week or so. I've been your host today, but not alone. This time we are hosting this together with Flora Ismail-Tipacharva. Among other many roles, Flora is a board member in National Environment Council and a vice chairman for the Biotechnology Society of Tanzania. And what's more, she is one of the advisory board members for the World Bioeconomy Forum. So, hi Flora, all good with your end?
Yes, hi Jukka. A warm welcome to everyone. I'm in Dar es Salaam today, the haven of peace and the commercial capital of Tanzania. Dar es Salaam has a population of 7.7 million and is a hub of natural resources and diverse economic activity. Tanzania is endowed with natural resources, and agriculture is one of the most important activities that engages more than 60% of our population. Dar es Salaam as a city is a 20-minute flight from the beautiful island of Zanzibar and a 2-hour drive from Kumi National Park in case you visit and want to relax a little bit. However, if you come to our beautiful city, one thing you must do is try the diverse cuisine, which is a mix of Portuguese, Arabic, German, and Swahili. I can really go on about our city, but Jukka, what do you think?
Sounds really delicious and attractive indeed. Definitely a place where to be, no doubt. Coincidentally, also the Finnish president is currently visiting Africa. He's today in South Africa, and today he's will be in Namibia. So all our interest of you. So, but back to today's agenda. The roundtable today is arranged in a collaboration with East African Community, EAC, Stockholm Environment Institute, SIE, Paper Manufacturers Association of South Africa, PAMSA. So without your support, we wouldn't have this occasion today. So big thanks belongs to you. We have built up an exciting debate with an impressive lineup of speakers from various parts of Africa, represented the most recent developments of the bioeconomy in the continent. And there are already few strategies announced, and looks like there are more to come. We will hear about these today. Bioeconomy certainly plays a role also in Africa, and we are extremely happy to dedicate this roundtable on Africa. Cannot wait.
Yeah, indeed, Jukka. And we will have a good overview on what we are witnessing, a new era for the bioeconomy in Africa, which will be moderated by Dr. Christian Fateman. We've had one roundtable before this one, and in the last one, we launched a survey on a global hub for the bioeconomy. As we see the value of the bioeconomy increasing everywhere, nations and regions on every continent are committing more and more to supportive measures. Several discussions related to supply chains, traceability, feedstock availability are simultaneously ongoing, and that could be advantageous to discuss at a global level. So our survey looked to ask 3 main questions. One was to gauge the appetite and commitment for constructive discussion at the global level. The second question was looking at whether or what would be the mechanism for setting up such a global hub, should it be proposed. And the third question was, how should this hub be supported? The survey was rolled out, as I said, at our first roundtable in February, and we will take advantage of this and other continued roundtables to present some of the responses that we gather. Jukka, have we received any responses since February that we can share with our audience today?
We have. Thanks, Flora. Indeed. Okay. With the pleasure, I will share you this pre-result. What do we have at this point of time? And thanks for also for participants of today. We even asked some questions from you that what do you think whether time is matter enough to setting up the global hub for the bioeconomy? And what I can tell you that 60% of you did mention that now it's right time to moving along to setting up the global hub for the bioeconomy. And 25% of you said that maybe it is the right time. And only 2% said that no, it's not yet time for it. So quite interesting result also from you. So thanks for your participation on it. But when it comes to results, when it comes to this digital survey, what we are now running, let me see. First of all, this is now an overview of the respondents. So looks like the majority of the respondents so far is coming from the private sector, and 30% of them is then representing the public organizations. Thanks to them who has already replied on this survey, and I would encourage you all to participate in this survey. You know, it takes only 10 minutes to fill up these questions. So secondly, we were asking that what are the most important relevant industrial bioeconomy sectors in your country, company, or in organization? And looks like main interest sector is dealing with the agriculture, accounting one-fourth of the responses, and followed by the forestry sector. Maybe this is not a big surprise. After these two biggest sectors, sectors interested are related to biotechnology, food, and biomanufacturing. And I must say, especially the biotechnology, biomanufacturing has raised up its importance. If you have a look, for example, what are then strategical point within US latest biostrategy review, or within China, and even in India, they are then talking about the biotechnology and biomanufacturing. So then when it comes to the global hub itself, we were asking these three questions mentioned by Flora. So the first question we asked that which type of topic do you suggest address at the global bioeconomy hub? And looks like that these results are pretty scattered, so there is no dominance of any topic. Maybe this is sort of, let's say, telling that the options we were providing in this questionnaire are quite comprehensive, that they are then covering the major part of the bioeconomy, what should be then discussed. But these are the results in a global level. Once we are moving along with this survey, we will certainly have a look how the things are seen in different continents. What's the situation in Africa? What's the situation in Latin America? So this is how do we see at this point of time. Then
Jukka,
yeah, please.
Jukka, this is very interesting. Sorry to interject. I acknowledge that these are very early results, and of course they might change with more and more respondents. And so please, we urge you all to fill out the survey. But from these results, it seems that bioeconomy and land, biotechnology, bioeconomy and energy, and bioeconomy materials are areas which may quite well set up in the initial agenda to be discussed at a global level. It will be really interesting to see how these priorities are set and what really drives these. Please continue. It's really intriguing, the results that are coming out.
Yeah, we are learning more as we are moving along, indeed. So then, we then asked that, in case there is a need to setting up a global hub for the bioeconomy, how it should be organized. and we were providing certain options. So, and looks like, okay, among the responses we have received at this point of time, okay, there is no really, let's say, desire to setting up the own COP type of arrangement for the bioeconomy. That's pretty clear based on these results we have received at this point of time. But instead, okay, looks like, okay, the majority thinks that, okay, it should be set up, okay, around, okay, global partnership establishment, followed by, okay, the foundation type of arrangement, and not that far away is then, okay, the desire to setting up the international panel of experts to running this type of arrangement.
Jukka, this is also very intriguing, and I don't want to take over the presentation, the great presentation you're making, but with this result, I think questions come to my mind, especially on this support for the hub, which may overlap with existing international platforms that we already have, because you see bioeconomy is somewhat of an interplay between economic international platforms and those that are natural resource or biodiversity based. So perhaps we might see at the end of this suggestions around merging of an existing platform or a new platform completely being proposed. What do you think?
Yeah, it is indeed. And I think that, okay, we are learning more as we are moving along. So it is maybe too early to draw any conclusions. So we need to have a deeper dive on these results and analyzing these more closely. But indeed, the options are open at this point of time. What did we also ask in case there is a need to setting up this kind of, okay, global hub? And, okay, we asked that, okay, whether this okay, bioeconomy community is ready to finance this type of activity. And this is quite interesting result also that, okay, looks like that, okay, almost 20% of the, okay, respondents would be ready to finance this type of activity. And I think, okay, it is telling us that, okay, the bioeconomy society is very serious on this matter. They are even ready to finance that, okay, this type of activity.
Now, this is really great feedback, Jukka, and thank you so much for this. Our esteemed audience, we encourage all of you to respond to the survey and share it with your networks. Your responses will really contribute and concretize some of the initial findings that Jukka has just presented. So, with Jukka, is this the last time we get a glimpse into some of the preliminary results?
Not at all, not at all. And, okay, as we announced that, okay, in our previous, okay, roundtable from Latin America, we will carry on this global survey. So the next time we will hear this, okay, interim results in the roundtable, which will be organized from London, actually 28th of June, and that will be focused on Europe. And we will organize that together with Chatham House. So we are all welcome to join to that event as well. But time flies. I think, okay, we need to get back to this agenda, what we have reserved for the audience. So today we are having a roundtable on the theme of the bioeconomy, people, planet, policies. So it is represented, okay, the pillar 1 in our terminology. We have these 4 pillars by which we have organized all our activities. As always, this panel is moderated by Christian Paterman, like mentioned by Flora, and specific topic of the session is that, okay, today we are witnessing a new era for the bioeconomy in Africa. But Flora, maybe you can now tell us how we run this occasion today, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Jukka. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have an excellent roundtable lined up for you today, entitled, as Jukka has mentioned, Witnessing a New Era for the Bioeconomy in Africa. We are extremely delighted to have a very well-versed panel, which is diverse, full of experts from the bioeconomy landscape across the continent. So we'd like to make this event as interactive as possible. So please share your comments and ask questions using the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. And without any further ado, I will give you a glance into the dazzling bio of Professor Christian Paterman, who will then introduce the panelists and moderate this high-level discussion. Professor Christian Paterman is a bioeconomy icon with a formal career of 36 years and more than 15 years post-retirement. He has been promoting, supporting, and building capacity for countries in the bioeconomy across the globe. Professor Christian has been recognized for his contribution and is a founding member of the German Advisory Committee on Bioeconomy. Professor Christian is also an active board member of the World Bioeconomy Forum and advisor to several other bioeconomy initiatives across the world. His illustrious career warrants a separate roundtable, so I would urge you to all go on the web and read about him. Welcome, Professor Christian. The digital floor is yours.
Well, dear friends, dear Flora, and also dear Yuka, thank you very much for your very kind introduction. And thank you very much for your first glimpse of interesting results of this survey, which, dear friends from all corners of the world, this is the first time such a survey on bioeconomy, and that means a very important economy model of today and the future, is being done globally. So this is the first of its kind today we have, and I'm very proud that in this round table, dear friends, we were able to share the first views, the first results. It's clear that this is not final, but anyway, we are the first. A very hearty welcome to all of you, as I said, from all the four corners of the world. It is the third time that such a round table within the World Bioeconomy Forum and within our section, People, Planet, Policies, is taking place. And if you listen to the section People, Planet, Policies, this is also very unique, because when you normally hear about this agglomeration, it says People, Planet, Profit. But we have substituted it by policies. And this is now the third thing, the first of its kind. This round table is for the first time dedicated to one special continent, to Africa. Last year, we were assembling colleagues from 4 continents, the Americas, Europe, Africa, and Asia. And this time we focus for good reasons on Africa, because we have the impression that there are a lot of things happening. Africa, with its huge reservoir of biomass, its enormous potentials for markets, opportunities for jobs, also the respect of nature, using deeply anchored knowledge from former times in the societies, but also adapted it with recent technological advanced movements like digitalization, biologization, artificial intelligence, ecosystems, and cognitive science, etc. This is immensely rich a continent in critical raw materials, in biological resources, in forests, in microorganisms. It's a hub of biodiversity. And these are all treasures for mankind, if hopefully properly used and shared. And we also find in Africa unused arable and non-arable land in a dimension you don't find in other continents. And you have the quickest growing part in the population, the youngest continent on our planet. And it is against this background, dear colleagues and friends, that we will spend the next 2 hours together looking on facts, on figures, on visions, which are accompanying bio-based developments in Africa, trying also to catch a glimpse on the potentials, but also, and I insist on that, focusing on constraints, obstacles by nature, but also by man. We have today assembled representatives from East, from West, and Southern Africa. Unfortunately, colleagues from Egypt, from the North, which we met in Sharm el-Sheikh at COP27, who also are dealing with the bioeconomy and announced work on a proper strategy, cannot take part, nor were we able to get also colleagues from Ghana, where we think interesting things are happening as well. But one very special thing, We have an African representative of a European institute from the Swedish Environmental Institute in Nairobi here with us. And he'll represent a very interesting partnership model, which we should not lose of our sight when talking about cooperation. And that is a partnership of accompanying assistance in the format of such a cooperative figure in the build-up of indigenous, of domestic, bio-based economies. So, dear colleagues, the representatives of the countries and regions today around this round table, if you take all of them together, it's a population of more than 500 million, and in 10 years, or in 8 years, or in 7 years, it will be 1 billion people. And now I have the great pleasure to introduce to you our keynote speaker, Philippe Ossano, who will give us primarily an overview on East Africa, the state of bioeconomy in the East African community, but probably also a little more. He is the center director of the SEI, the Swedish Environmental Institute Africa. He's an outstanding environmental policy expert with more than 20 years of practical experiences in many areas, from biodiversity, climate change to water and land. And he studied in Canada and in South Africa. Dear Philip, we are all very curious, and you have the floor.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Thank you so much, Christian, for that wonderful introduction. I suppose that you can hear me well?
We can.
Okay, great. It's such a pleasure and a privilege to be able to come and share my thoughts around the status of bioeconomy in East Africa, within East Africa community. And also, of course, the Horn of Africa, which also includes Ethiopia. Can I get to the next slide? So just by way of introduction, for colleagues who might not be familiar, so the East Africa community is an intergovernmental entity that brings together 7 countries within the East Africa, within the eastern part of Africa. The largest and the newest entrant to the community is the Democratic Republic of Congo. So you can see the map showing the partner states. It includes United Republic of Tanzania, Uganda, South Sudan, Rwanda, Kenya, Burundi, and of course DRC. The interesting thing about this region is that it has quite very high level of human population. It has quite a lot of differences in terms of biomass potential, whether it's forestry, whether it's wildlife, whether it is land. So that presents a very great opportunity for bioeconomy, and a big potential also. Most of the countries in the region, of course, have their economies strongly dependent on agriculture, food production. A lot of exports from the region, of course, are bio-based exports. Mostly, of course, also primary produce. So that present again quite substantial opportunity around looking at options and potential for value addition. And of course, one of the other challenges that happens relates to bio wastes from farms, but also from from many of the major cities. Of course, we have a lot of organic waste that are not properly utilized. Again, that present opportunities in the bioeconomy sector. Just wanted to also add that there's quite a very strong political cooperation within this country. So that presents a lot of opportunity when it comes to harmonization of regional policies, including trade policies. And there's quite, as Christian did mention earlier, also a very young population. The young population across the whole of Africa, in fact, about 42% of the 1.3 to 1.4 billion people in Africa are 15 years and below. So that means that for policymakers, When it comes to bioeconomy, when it comes to what they prioritize, of course, is how you can develop economies that can create economic growth, but at the same time, to create job opportunities and employment opportunities for young people. And we know, of course, currently we are dealing with one of the major challenges, which is climate change. And to deal with climate change, a lot of economies within this region, as it is in most of the other developing parts of the world, have to follow a low carbon growth path. So that present again also new opportunities for bioeconomy. And lastly, I also just wanted to present the fact that there's quite regulations and governance issues that also come with management of biodiversity. All the countries of the region are signatories to the Convention on Biological Diversity, which of course presents opportunities, of course, around conservation of resources, which is important, but also sustainable utilization of resources, and most importantly, the equitable sharing of benefits that come from biodiversity use and biodiversity resources. Next slide. So the question, of course, has been why bioeconomy at this stage? We are talking about witnessing a new era for bioeconomy. And one might ask, why is it important and what is different? There are a number of opportunities that we see that bioeconomy can and is already bringing to East African countries. The first and most important, as I've talked about, is job creation. The path to development, the path to economic growth in the region is a path that has to be sustainable because that is the demands of our time. So green growth has become a very important, policy opportunity and policy priority within the region. How do we make sure that economies within the region can grow, at the same time avoiding more emissions of greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, at the same time avoiding biodiversity loss? So the green growth agenda is very central to the economies within East Africa. And we see bioeconomy as providing that pathway, particularly, of course, also green industrialization. The second challenge, of course, has got to do with food security, improve food security. At the moment, the challenge that Africa does have is that because of low value addition and because of lack of technologies and infrastructure for the storage and preservation of food produce, an estimated 40 to 45% of crop produce across Africa is lost at the post-harvest stage. So investment in post-harvest management, value addition presents a good opportunity, of course, within the region. But this has to be linked to the different value chains. And this also is important because if you then have increased investment in post-harvest management of food crops, you actually reduce food losses, which at the moment is quite high. By reducing food losses, actually, that would mean more food is available at cheaper cost to the population. Currently, of course, many of the countries in the region are having food imports, are importing a lot of food. And of course, then this would be a good opportunity to improve the food security situation. The third area is on improved health. As we have had before, the wellness industry is actually growing. A lot of interest and demand for health products that are coming from natural products in the healthcare. And again, of course, the region is endowed with a diversity of bio-based resources that can provide raw materials for pharmaceutical industry. And that's an opportunity that we are looking at. And the fourth area, of course, is bio-based products. A range of these in different sectors. I would just highlight, for example, biomaterials for construction. Given the high level of population growth, there's a lot of demand for housing, and so the construction sector is placing a lot of load in terms of climate emissions linked to climate change because of the use of cement in the construction. And of course, we do know from the rest of the world, that particularly Europe, for example, a country like Sweden, where my institution is based, has quite a very good experience with the use of wood and wood products in the construction industry. So as we are speaking, for example, I'm just with a team from the East Africa region, from Kenya, that is on a learning tour on how to develop wood-based commercial industry, wood-based commercial industry in Sweden, because there's quite a lot of opportunity for that remains untapped. It will be able to provide low-cost housing, particularly in the urban and peri-urban regions where we see a lot of proliferations of informal settlements in the major urban cities. I will later on during the presentation, also share with you opportunities in biofertilizers, for example, and biopesticides. And of course, we also see a drive towards less and less use of plastics. Many countries, for example, Rwanda and Kenya, have banned single-use plastic, and the need to be able to develop alternatives, biodegradable alternatives, has created a lot of opportunities for investment in bioeconomy in that sector. And again, of course, this is also driven by the global challenges to deal with pollution. Currently, within the United Nations Environment Assembly, there's a discussion about a global treaty on plastic ban. And of course, so we see this as a driver that as regulations are coming in to reduce the dependence on plastic, the opportunities are presented for bioeconomy. Another area, of course, is related to energy. Not to say, of course, that a lot of many households in the rural areas and in the informal sectors of urban areas still depend on biomass, on charcoal and wood fuel. That is creating deforestation, and that's creating a ripple effect, because then it's leading to increased emission from the land and forestry sectors. And lastly, of course, we know that conservation of environment is very important. So a lot of the waste that we produce go into our water systems, go into our natural ecosystems, and leads to diseases, and this is a problem. Next slide. So when we, Stockholm Environment Institute, together with BioInnovate Africa, which is a program based at the International Center for Insect Physiology and Ecology, CIPE, and the East Africa Science and Technology Commission, ISTECO, which is a technical agency of the East Africa community, and other partners, we over the last 2 years did a status review of bioeconomy in East Africa. And we found out 3 things. One is the fact that, as I said before, there's very low level of value addition to primary produce. So that it presents an opportunity, of course, to invest in value addition. The agricultural sector is actually a place where there's very limited use of biomass residues. In fact, in many of the farms, the practice of burning agricultural residue is quite prevalent, and we realize also that leads to air pollution, and air pollution causes health problems. So taking action on that presents opportunities again in terms of conversion of that biomass residues to other products that can be useful in different areas. And of course, there's inefficiency in the biomass value chain that presents an opportunity to increase better efficiency. Next slide. So as part of that evidence base, of course, together under the leadership of ESC, and my colleague, fortunate later on, would speak to this at the panel, the region identified 4 critical areas for bioeconomy. Of course, this the priority at the country level would differ from country to country, but overall within the region, food security and sustainable agriculture is very central. Value addition in crops and livestock and aquatic resources, and investment in valorization of microbial products, and development of novel foods and feeds for livestock, and of course bio-based agricultural inputs. The second thematic area of the strategy speaks to well-being and health, bio-based pharmaceutical, much better investment and use in traditional medicines, and of course development of bio-based cosmetics products. The third area is on bio-based industrial development. I've talked about packaging and investment in biodegradable packaging. but we also have opportunities in terms of bioprocessing enzymes and construction materials, bio-based textile fibers, and renewable bio-based oils. And the third area, which of course is very important, is sustainable energy. We are looking at opportunities in biomass briquettes and pellets as an alternative to firewood, and production of biogas and organic waste, and then advanced fuel. Next slide. So what is the status of bioeconomy among all the countries within the region? We see Rwanda and Ethiopia have started the process to develop regional bioeconomy, as well as Uganda. So 3 countries are at that stage where they're in the planning stage, or are actually have initiated that process to develop national bioeconomy strategies to speak to their national circumstances and national opportunities. Of course, many of the countries already have science, technology, and innovation policy strategy, which provides the overall framework around how bioeconomy strategies and national action plans are developed. We see that this is an opportunity, of course, to strengthen, of course, not just programming at the country level, but also engagement within the private sector, because at the moment, most of the private sector investment are driven at the national level because of the different national priorities. We do not at this stage, of course, have any development in Burundi, but we are planning policy dialogue in Burundi together with the East African community sometimes later in October to, of course, also bring up this agenda as central to the government's attention. Next slide. So I just wanted to give an example. I guess one of the challenges that has come with engagement with this work is, where is the opportunity for the private sector, and is there room for industry that can provide investment, and how can they go about it? So I just wanted to give an example of biocontrol agents, and just to give to state that overall, when you look at Africa has the lowest among all the world regions, the lowest level of per capita production, food production, or agricultural production. One of the reasons that is attributed to low levels of input, particularly fertilizer. And the African governments, through the African Union, under what is called the Abuja Declaration, committed to invest massively in the use of fertilizer inputs to be able to increase production and productivity. In fact, at the time of the declaration of the Abuja Declaration, which is about 10 years ago, on average, we had about application of fertilizer at the level of 8 kilograms per hectare per year, against a global average of about 50 kilograms per hectare per year. So the ambition was actually to even raise this application to the level of global average. But then recently we've seen also challenges with what is going on in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia, that has affected the fertilizer supply chain, increased actually the cost of fertilizer. So that's becoming a lot more expensive, not just to individual farmers, but actually even to national governments, because many of the African governments, because of the centrality of agriculture to the economy, have national fertilizer subsidy programs. And when the cost of fertilizer is increasing, that means that governments have to spend more on fertilizer. So that's quite a challenge, but it's also an opportunity, because biofertilizer is becoming possible to produce. As part of the study that we did, we had one example of a company, Real IPM, in Kenya, is a Kenyan subsidiary company of the Belgian BioBest Group, which develops, produces, and sells biological control agents. It's both biopesticides but also biofertilizer. The company is registered in Kenya, but has the products registered also for use in Tanzania, in Ethiopia, Ghana, Mozambique, and South Africa. So this is one area where we see opportunities in terms of bio-based fertilizer. And the other thing that is important that Christian talked about, of course, is that cooperation, the cooperation between, in this case, Belgium and Kenya, the transfer of technology, but also support in terms of marketing and training, providing a lot of training for the users of fertilizers to be able to apply it. Next slide. But there were quite many other examples of small, micro, and medium enterprises that have invested in different opportunities in bioeconomy. We had a company in Uganda called Higher Bioplastics, which is producing biodegradable packaging from sugarcane and water hyacinth plants. In Ethiopia, we have Almi Foods Manufacturing, which is doing value addition to sorghum. The same is happening for Bonvite Agro Industry, which is a company based in Uganda. Again, we have a company in Tanzania that is processing seaweed in Zanzibar actually to produce skincare products. And a company in Arusha in Tanzania that is called Banana Investment Limited that is converting agro waste to optimized processing of useful products that can be sold into the market. Next slide. But I guess, of course, all this, what we're discussing requires an ecosystem that enables the investment, enables government to, support bioeconomy from the policy measures. So a number of things have become very important to deal with. Number one is, of course, increased agricultural productivity that I've talked to before. The issue also is on bioprospecting for novel bioresources and use of indigenous knowledge. There's quite a challenge there because technologies and laboratories for bioprospecting analysis are very few. So that investment in infrastructure becomes very important in terms of laboratory analysis, but also general infrastructure around roads, storage facilities, aggregation facilities, becomes very important as well. We know generally that small, medium, and micro enterprises in Africa are operating under very constrained environment. They have very limited capacity to raise capital because most of the financial providers like banks and cooperatives do not wish to provide loans and facilities, and that's very that needs to be changed. And of course, there's a disconnect between research in the universities and research centers with the industry. So that also needs to be improved. Next slide. Next slide. And of course, just as a way forward, we had several recommendations. The report is available to share. I just wanted to highlight two. Is the need to have harmonized standards in the region. This is not just the case for East Africa for trade, but across Africa. Now we have a free trade area, Africa Continental Free Trade Area, that provides a good opportunity to promote trade in services and products that are bio-based. And also, of course, I kind of emphasize the need for finance because that's a very big challenge that's limiting really expansion and growth of this bio-based industry. And lastly, of course, in human capital expertise and capacity is also required, and that requires investment in research and training. So I think, Christian, I suppose I'm probably just within my time or over my time, but I'm very happy that I was able to share some of these insights during this policy dialogue, and I look forward, of course, to continued engagement.
Well, thank you very, very much, dear Philip, for this splendid overview. We received, this is really a very triggering keynote, and I particularly liked your remarks on the problems of the efficiency and inefficiency of biomass and the question of the value chains, because we should not forget, of all economy models of today, the bioeconomy is the one which is most naturally scientifically based and value-based, value chains, creating new values in the center. So excellent, thank you very much. And I'm coming back to the way forward because, as you rightly put, this is not only for the East African community, it's all over Africa. Now we start with a panel, and I'm very happy that we start in the south for good reasons, because South Africa has the longest new bioeconomy tradition of Africa. It was the first state which has established its own bioeconomy strategy, and therefore I think they should have first the floor. And I'm very happy that one of the drivers of the present bioeconomy activities in the government of South Africa, Dr. Vuyisile Fehane, he is with us. He is a chemical pathologist, very strongly involved in biological manufacturing, but also has a company, so is bridging academia and implemented economy. Dear Vuyisile, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Let me just share my screen. Right, I would like to express my gratitude to the World Bioeconomy Forum for inviting me to give a talk and share some perspectives on witnessing a new era for the bioeconomy in Africa. I represent an organization called the Technology Innovation Agency, which is an agency of the Department of Science and Innovation in South Africa. We are created through an act of parliament, and we are responsible for the innovation aspects of the bioeconomy strategy, which I shall share. Let me stop this. The bioeconomy strategy of South Africa was approved in 2013. So this year we are in essence 10 years old. The strategy was approved to, in essence, look at how the country can harness skills, infrastructure investments, funding investments, opportunities created through patents and papers for the purposes of establishing commercializable bio-innovation products. The whole purpose of this is to set up SMMEs, which eventually would grow and contribute to GDP, job creation, and revenue creation. Our strategy covers all sectors of the bioeconomy and in essence looks at all types of innovations in the bioeconomy. A recent report by the Malabo Montpellier panel in essence compared the bioeconomy strategy of South Africa and various other countries on the African continent. And I'd recommend that the colleagues have a look at this particular report. Through the Department of Science and Innovation, certain factors were identified for enabling a bioeconomy, which are listed on this slide. The key ones being human capital development, research and excellence, access to next generation technologies, incentives and funding, access to global intellectual property and knowledge pools, alignment of regulations, very stringent ethics frameworks, communication, institutional arrangements, as well as governance and coordination. All of these factors needed to be in place in order to enable a bioeconomy, which is in essence the output of the strategy to enable a functional bioeconomy in the country. The inputs to the policy and development goals were supported by various other thought leadership initiatives, such as the NDP of 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals, various publications, such as the State of the South African Research Enterprise, and of course, seeking alignment with the African Union through its Agenda 2063. All of these reports and various others were consulted towards developing this bioeconomy strategy. The policy emphasizes a number of things, starting from the top, governance, looking at incentives and policy, then over to the innovation culture, as well as entrepreneur support. Human capability is very important in terms of skills development, access to next generation technologies. The knowledge development is really around access to information, whether it has been open science, open data resources, partnerships and networks, very important for ensuring that the partnership and networks are created, in essence, are shared and to drive common goals. Finally, the financing of the national system of innovation was very important from the perspective of looking how we can harness all the funding initiatives of the country towards common goals. The decadal plan for science, technology, and innovation is in essence the implementing strategy of the 2019 Science, Innovation, and Technology White Paper. This decadal plan prioritized certain systemic enablers, funding, coordination, skills for the economy, knowledge creation, linkages between government and business, as well as improving monitoring and evaluation. The white paper and the decadal plan are linked in terms of this slide, which in essence showed that early on in our national system of innovation, certain ministerial reviews took place, reviews of the white paper, review of the performance of our national system of innovation over several periods, looking also at the higher education and STI institutional landscape, the HESTL review, as we call it. Certain foresight studies were conducted by NACI, which is National Advisory Council on Innovation. In 2019, we delivered the 2019 HTO white paper, and I'm glad to report that as at November 2022 last year, the decadal plan for South Africa was approved. The decadal plan suggested certain technology focus areas, priority initiatives, institutional requirements and arrangements and partnerships, funding required and ways to source funding, timelines, but most importantly, indicators to be able to measure and report on the success of South Africa's initiatives towards the bioeconomy. Sectoral master plans are in essence the initiative of the Department of Trade Innovation of the DTIC. And in essence, what these sectoral master plans do is come up with strategies, stakeholders, relationships to address certain shortcomings, opportunities within various sectors. There are several sectoral master plans: the sugar master plan, cannabis master plan, agriculture and agro-processing, as well as the healthcare products master plan. The example of the Sugar Milling Research Institute and this sectoral master plan, the sugar master plan, in essence addresses the failure, or at least the risk towards decline of the sugar industry. This was identified to be caused by distorted global prices that are below South Africa's costs of production. And this is because of the sales of surpluses from various other markets in the world. There's certainly been an increase in the volumes of low-priced tariff-free exports. And of course, looking at the health promotions levy or a tax on sugar-containing drinks. All of these have actually contributed to constraints within the sugar industry. And it's very important, as the decadal plan suggests, that as a country, we look at how we can address and support these struggling sectors. As far as future perspectives are concerned, what we've learned from the Sugar Milling Research Institute and the objectives of the sugar master plan is that it's very important as a country, we think about diversifying sectors before decline is experienced. This means addressing policy constraints, financial modeling, coming up with sustainable finance models, and putting in market expertise to understand what markets are available for us as a country to exploit. We've certainly understood that the future will require large investments in research and development, particularly in job-creating industries such as forestry, advanced biotech to be competitive as a country, climate-smart agriculture, to counter climate change, health, medical devices, and diagnostics. We've certainly understood that as a country, particularly as an African continent, we must scale up our vaccine and API, active pharmaceutical ingredients, manufacturing capacity. This is very important for us as a country and as a continent, because we've certainly understood from the COVID experience that without the ability to produce our own vaccines or APIs, we're in essence left at risk. This addresses the unfavorable condition in the country, in the continent, where 1% of Africa's vaccines are produced on the continent by up to 4 or 5 vaccine manufacturing entities. Most of our vaccines on the African continent are procured from outside the continent. Africa has certainly not done anything about this. The CDC's partnerships for African vaccine manufacturing, the World Health Organization, and investments from the IFC have certainly assisted towards realizing this challenge and addressing this challenge. This is also achieved by the Pharmaceutical Marketing Plan for Africa. As a country, we've certainly appreciated the value of inbound technology transfer. What this means is that we fast-track access to developed technologies and certainly to adapt these technologies to the local context. This means also that when opportunities come up in the circular bioeconomy, we certainly must invest in these through focused research innovations. By addressing circular bioeconomy and resource utilization, what we certainly will come up with is new bio-based products, which we can scale up and commercialize. As a country, we've recognized that infrastructure to commercialize bioprocess innovations is very, very important. And what we've looked at, even as an organization, is investment into small scale or pilot to tall scale biorefineries. As the Technology Innovation Agency, we've invested in a number of science councils, particularly the CSIR, in our industrial biocatalysis hub, as well as our algal biorefineries. Bioenergy innovations are certainly topical, considering the energy and electricity challenges faced by the countries, and this will certainly be an area to invest in as a country. As we grow as a country, as we go into the space of GMO policy and so forth, it's certainly important that we understand and increase our capacity in biosafety. This is particularly in the space of applied biosafety and biosecurity policy and risk management. We certainly must invest in clinical trials and allied capability as a country, and of course, develop metrics, measures of the South African bioeconomy. This is in essence to inform policy, investment decisions, and resource mobilizations, and certainly to advance and enhance government strategies. Market access is one that is very close to myself, as well as many other entities in the country, because certainly government has made a commitment to support local manufacturers and to procure from local manufacturers. This is what we call direct procurement by government, reviewing tariff policies, and in essence looking at regulatory reforms for regional harmonization. The case in point is a recent development within our health sector, where the country's only and oldest vaccine manufacturing entity, BioVac Institute, was not successful in the award of the tenders put out by government, particularly for pneumococcal vaccines, in particular Prevnar. These were granted, of course, to the Serum Institute of India and its local entity, and other entities such as GSK of Belgium, as well as Sanofi of France. What this does, colleagues, is in essence fly in the face of government's contribution and promises to local manufacturers to directly procure from them. There's something that we need to look at as a country and address all policies around government procurement, because it will certainly have an effect, a negative effect, if not addressed, on our recent investment into the mRNA vaccine manufacturing capability, from the World Health Organization, which is currently run by a company in South Africa. Data management policy and practice must be looked at, considering that as a country, we're now investing heavily into genomics data, particularly in crop, animal, and human genetics. Resources data, such as land underutilization, using our current satellite capability, must also be looked after and invested into. What this does is, in essence, allow us to develop strategies and look at ways through which we can exploit databases of technologies that are under development. We've certainly recognized the need for us to support and invest in skills workforces, particularly in biomanufacturing and bioprocessing, looking at the curricula of our higher education institutions, our TVET colleges in the country. We've certainly looked at global collaborations, and as a TIA, we've certainly not been shy in partnering with African countries and through other science councils, such as Agricultural Research Council of South Africa, Peru, Brazil, Asia, the USA, EU, and Australasia, both through the development of new cultivars and the commercialization thereof. Technology demonstrators are, in essence, the flavor of TIA. All our investment must result in technology that can be demonstrated and commercialized. By entrepreneurship, our efforts towards the development and creation and implementation of a national bioentrepreneurship program is underway through various partners in the national system of innovation. Research shares being continuously funded by the National Research Foundation, our partner at higher education institutions, have certainly delivered as far as papers and the generation of new knowledge is concerned. Finally, as a country, we need to look at new commercial financing models, in essence, looking at ways to attract funding from private equity, which we understand has billions of US dollars under management, venture capital, and impact investment opportunities. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for, and I did not expect something else, a very impressive overview of what you've done during the last 11 years. And for me, dear friend, the question comes up, is it time to update your bioeconomy strategy? Or will you go to continue it in a strong embedment with many, many other policies? That's something we are going to discuss later on. I very much liked that you mentioned incentives in the area of tariffs, in the area of procurement, in the area of taxes. And I very much liked the cooperation you have with other parts of the world and other continents. Dear friends, we stay in the South, and I'm happy to introduce the next panelist coming from the neighboring country, Namibia, Dr. Paulus Mungei, who works in the National Commission on Research, Science and Technology, the so-called NCRST, which is part of the Ministry of Higher Education. And he's extremely well networked within the Global Bioeconomy Summit mechanisms, the ICGB, but also with the FAO. And I'm very curious to see to what extent now the advances of the bioeconomy are taking place in Namibia, the neighboring country of South Africa. Dear Paulus, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And hello, everyone. And really a great honor and pleasure to form part of these vibrant discussions. And I want to sincerely thank the World Bioeconomy Forum for this session. I'm going really to talk about the development of Namibian bioeconomy strategy, which is envisaged to be implemented during this period, 2023 to 2028. I will skip the background, but what I have to highlight perhaps is this, that obviously this is a really great discussions. However, I think it's very important for me to highlight where we are coming from. Of course, Namibia realized that the very importance of developing a national bioeconomy strategy due to the just advantage that have been already highlighted by the previous speakers. We are coming from identifying indigenous knowledge, value addition, and technology transfer platforms, and also in emulating the biotechnology sphere towards social economic development in Namibia. But what we did in the past, we have some background studies of which we study the bioeconomic desktop studies of those countries, and realize that in align with their national development plans to address poverty reduction, we have highlighted few key areas of which Namibia want to focus on. One, agricultural and health, natural resources, taking into account that this is really some of the countries like Malaysia and South Africa were very close. There's really a very call from Namibia, especially from the a revised national science policy of 2020 that have called for the development of national bioeconomy strategy. And this is also in alignment with our national development plans toward achieving our Vision 2030. So we started this work sometimes 2019 and through a multi-sectoral consultations, also going out to different regions, including public and private sectors. And those are, I know the acronyms that it just says different ministries and stakeholders. And those pictures on the background are some of the really initial governance consultations of the development of bioeconomy. And going to the regions, obviously they have been, the word by then it had been one of the strange words, of course, but we have to communicate that this is bioeconomy is not something out of extraordinary things that we are continuing doing every day. And one of the recommendations from the State Talking Report, which covers the 14 regions of Namibia, are those activities that were taking place between 2019 and 2020, or 2020 and 2021 include really, I will just highlight very few things of this, a request for investing in economic activity that generates income for our biological resources. And also there's also a request for strong public and private partnership, research, and must focus on improving socioeconomic status, just to highlight a few. I take into account that we are going to share this presentation, and obviously with the time that I have, I hope that you'll be reading through also this presentation. But what we're aiming is really to have a vibrant bioeconomy that drives innovation, conservation, and sustainable utilization of our biological resources. And the mission is there to promote and accelerate the development of innovations and in sustainable use of biological resources for growth and sustainable development in Namibia. A lot really, the next 3 slides are very rich slides, but I'm going to highlight very few things under different thematic areas of which we want to have some strategic objective highlighted in a bioeconomy strategy with some activities of which our value addition and employment creation is very key. Of course, we know that employment in Africa, for example, I'm sure that this is not only a problem to Namibia as such, but we want to increase seed funding under agriculture for value addition in agricultural produce with focus on neglected and underutilized crops. And the other one is also develop bush biomass value chain. We know that most of our lands, for example, have been taken up by bush, have been encroached by bush. However, these resources can also be used as stock feeds, for example. And those are some of the
Paulus, may I interrupt you?
Yes.
Some people ask whether you were showing slides or not.
Oh, you don't see my slides. I thought I share my slide. Let me just stop. Let me just share the screen. I'm so sorry. Can you see it now?
No. We haven't seen any slide.
Right. Let me just start sharing again. The screen.
Now we see one.
You see one.
Strategic objective, SO1, value addition and employment creation.
Right. Can you see it now? So
yeah,
sorry.
we see it, yes.
Apologies. But where I'm coming from is really things that I have highlighted already. I will skip, but this is what I said we want to achieve. And where we are coming from, just to take you back, focusing really in those areas. And our vision, our science policy covers the science policies request for the development of our bioeconomy strategy, and also toward achieving our strategic national development plans. Those are the private sectors that I have highlighted, where we did some consultations. And I also highlighted some of what we did in 2 regional consultations, really by going to different sectors and investing in economic activity that generates income are some of the recommendations. Also investing in research and local innovation schemes that are focused on capacity buildings and competitive source of production. And I have highlighted again previously that there's the vision for bioeconomy strategy and a mission also that want to promote and accelerate deployment of the deployment of innovation and the sustainable use of biological resources. And I was on this slide, of which I also highlighted that those 3 areas, those focus areas, we want to have inclusive fundings, and we also want to have development bush biomass value chain, which include communal farmers, and also want to have enhanced, promote pharmaceutical products through bioinnovation using our indigenous biological resources. I think Philip in the presentation also has highlighted that I think Africa has also learned from COVID that we have much potential for our indigenous biological resources, of which we can really take our products to be taken as pharmaceutical being produced in our countries through collaboration efforts. And the second one in terms of our natural resources, training on climate smart agriculture. Obviously, we learn also that climate change it's really taking toll. Namibia is a semi-arid country, and obviously different climatic conditions or climate change phenomena every year's problems. And should we have taken some of the initiatives through climate change initiatives, will be assisting us really in taking that. In terms of environmental sustainability, let me just put this down. Under agriculture, want to restore agricultural land through sustainable bush biomass and utilization. And the second one is under natural resources, we want to safeguard the environment through the development of ecosystem-based monitoring tools that really have to tell us in terms, for example, of different early warning systems that may be coming up. And then the second one is research and development, really under those areas, the bioeconomy highlighted that want to increase plant and animal production through biological resource developments, research that also strengthen agricultural bioscience and innovation, and similar again to research and development of pharmaceuticals, especially what I have highlighted in using also our indigenous biological resources, develop of innovative digital value chain based on biodiversity, because sometimes there's also a challenge of, taking, for example, products from here to the market. And digital value chain can assist in taking of accelerating value products to the market. In terms of creating awareness, I mean, we have been talking about bioeconomy now, but we know the activities. When you talk of the activities, what must be done is better, but the word can be also one of a very tricky word. But we want to promote, through different initiatives, using indigenous products through capacitating also our local communities and upscaling, capacity building through knowledge dissemination, having some workshops. I want to take a step further by going to our maruro sector, which is one of our indigenous trees. It's also found in different countries, I think Southern Africa, one being South Africa, I think Mozambique and Zimbabwe. And all this, the fruit, the tree have different values by different communities. So this it can also have also different offsets. I know in Namibia we have a rural sector as such, but the bioeconomy development, it's also in line with follows the Food and Agriculture Organization bioeconomy development guidelines. Principle, I think there are 15 principles, of which one is food security and nutrition, of whereby you see on your top left corner, you see that there is really some product that can be coming up from those. There is also existing local knowledge by preserving the traditional knowledge, especially women and youth. Their knowledge must be preserved, their cultural must be preserved, and also effective governance so that we sustainably utilize our biological resources. As I said, this is only one of the sector, but there could be also other similar sectors. Where we are coming from and where we are at the moment is that we started with this initiative of the development. Sometimes 2019 have some regional consultations and have some workshops, and we have a final validation workshop that took place sometimes last year. And at the moment, we have discussion with the minister sometimes this year in February that are waiting for cabinet discussions, and we have some initiative and activities that we are going to do with some implementation, of course, with some partners, both national or regional within the region. Colleagues and everyone else, thank you very much. This is where Namibia we are at the moment, and we are, of course, appreciating and looking forward to. I'm looking forward to further discussions on this important topic. Thank you.
Paulus, thank you very much. I also look forward not only to our discussion, but to your next step when the cabinet has approved your strategy and you're going to implement it, because that would be in particular of interest to all of us. I very much liked in your presentation that you mentioned also the role of women in Africa, empowerment of women, that you also talked about local knowledge, which is, I think, an immense treasure we have not yet really grabbed. We have not really started to understand. And I very much liked also that you were talking more than others about climate change, because you have a country with a lot of semi-arid area. And that brings me to our next speaker. We're moving from the south with particular geographical features now to West Africa, to Burkina Faso, which will be completely different. And here I'm very happy to welcome Madame Safieto Sanfo. She is an agricultural economist, in particular interested in climate change economies, and she works at the Vascal Competence Center, which is supposed to be a West African science center on climate change and adapted land use. And here we both in our preps found out that this endeavor was featured and also supported and funded parts of my home office in Germany, the German Ministry of Research and Technology. So that was a very nice side effect. And I'm very happy that you now present us your activities of your country in the bioeconomy in West Africa. Safieto, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Professor Christian, to give me the floor. I'm very happy, I'm very happy. And I would like to thank, the bioeconomy team, basically you, Professor Christian, to invite me, to be able to speak about, bioeconomy in West Africa with case studies in Burkina Faso. I'm very happy here today to take you through, opportunities and challenges we may see in West Africa with case studies in Burkina Faso. As Professor said, my name is Safieto Sanfo, and I'm scientist, agri-economist working for Wascal, as he already, highlighted what Wascal is doing, and the core funding is coming from BMBF, where he has also worked a lot. Thank you so much. So,
Now
So
we have opportunities. We see the slide
yes.
opportunities.
So yes, I'm taking you through, ECOWAS countries. So as you can see the map, ECOWAS countries, we have 15 countries in West Africa, basically, where WASCAL, is working. But I'm based, in Burkina Faso, where you can see, the map, if you look at the map. So I will give, the case studies, about basically in Burkina Faso. In West Africa, waste management challenges of ECOWAS countries, specifically, the heavily urbanized cities, like Ghana, Togo, Nigeria, the big Nigeria, and also Senegal in Dakar. ECOWAS countries generated, more than, 55,000, of tons of organic waste. This is statistic, in 2016. But, this kind of waste, basically organic waste, trapped nearby 2015. And in Burkina Faso, we generate also a lot of waste, from agri-food and also green waste, which represent, 40% of the country's waste. We have some problems also because, in these developing countries, basically inappropriate waste disposal, and this poor waste management cause pollution, inhibits storm, and create, water drainage problem, and also aggravate floods and increase disease risk, like malaria, like diarrhea, and cholera, and some, kind of, disease, which, disturb, the whole population. And this is a very, very problem, challenges for these cities, these big cities. And we noticed that by enhancing waste recycling, for agriculture, livestock, food, green urban spaces, and green energy, bioeconomy creates a lot of jobs, and it also benefits, urban socio-ecosystem resilience, and also livelihood and food security in these countries. Then we would like to know more, about the bioeconomy sector. It's a new sector, basically with informal, management. It's not well structured. Then in Burkina Faso, we would like to know what happened in this sector, what are the opportunities, and what are the challenges. So we did a kind of case studies, and we target, some small, and middle enterprise in the Burkina Faso. Basically, we would like to recall that in this country, in Burkina Faso and also in Ghana, women are basically involved in waste management, recycling, and repurposing. For instance, in Burkina Faso, they collect with the city council. They organize themselves, and they collect organic waste, and they repurpose the organic waste into compost, for the city, plant nursery, and also for the urban and peri-urban agriculture. So this company, we interviews like RMH, Waka Group, SOFAB, and Faso Biogas. They are also involved in bioeconomy, recycling, and repurposing, and organic waste, into agro-food residue, into fertilizer, into green electricity, and into biofertilizer and biovinegar. For instance, Faso Biogas is a company, a small and medium company, which repurpose water hyacinth into biogas, into electricity, And this company, what they do, they even create jobs, but they also sequester, the carbon, because they are, recycling waste, into biogas, into these useful, material. So they sequester also the carbon. And we try to quantify the carbon they have been sequestering, and you can see that it's more than, 1,000, CO2 per year. that they have been able to sequester. And this course, is also very, very interesting and create, some money. And we try to quantify it as we are economists, and then it can generate, some money around 20,000 euro a year. And I mean, beyond, sequestering the carbon and also creating money, this kind of bioeconomy with these business, models, with these enterprise, they also create employment, some enterprise were able, to create 67 full-time workers, and also 300 part-time workers. And also, they generate energy, and the energy, is used also to lighten people life and also to help, the countries access to energy. As you know, that electricity problem, in these countries is very, very, important, because we have a huge problem. The access to electricity is very few, in this country, basically also in the rural area. And that they can also do, some fertilizer and also some industrial products, and also for animal food. Then it can also enhance the livestock and also the farming system, because in Africa, more than 17%, basically in West Africa, more than 17%, of the population is rural. And their base, the economy is based on farming and livestock. Yes, these small and medium enterprise and company generate job, and also help, for food production, but also for greening our cities, and cleaning also our city, because they try to recycle the waste, that the cities are producing into valuable, material and reusable material. They do have some challenges. And what we notice that we do some stakeholder mapping, we do some surveys, and we can note, some institutional challenges like, lack of operational means in the field. We have also a lack of working standard to ensure effective control, of the regulation laws. We have also some poor implementation of regulation and laws in the field. We have some market challenges like informal sector, for bioeconomy goods and services. As we said, it's, still informal. And also some bioeconomy enterprise and actor play on the local informal market. No market, both upstream and downstream system for, their product. And we have also some financial challenges like the banking system, which is very explosive, and we have little access, perform poorly, and therefore present hardly, for financing. We have also bioeconomy company, especially small and medium enterprise actor that have only little or no access to the private funds. Then we have also, the condition for obtaining the loans are very little and very, problem to access these funds. And we have also a flexible and require guarantee rationally high interest rates. And only we have more prominent and better structural organized can take advantage, of the opportunity offered by the political and the regulatory framework. The small one, cannot afford. Hello, we were just thinking about some solutions, and we think that we can look at the knowledge gaps, like we can try, to do some customized training program, for these indigenous knowledge, also must be valued. If people are trained, they can, more market, their valuable product, and also access maybe to loans and access to the credit so that they can easily organize themselves. And at the institutional level, we think that we can well design national, strategy and oriented strong law. We can also try to integrate, all these stakeholders together. for the gender inequality and inequity, we need to work hard to awareness and raise, these women and youth empowerment advocacy, because women and youth are the most, actor in this sector. And the local community, reality, we must take them also into consideration while maybe we design, the policy and also the program in the bioeconomic sector. The market also is very important, and also we must promote and invest, into, bio-circular economy. I thank you very much, for listening to me. And if you need more information, you can Google, our work, but you can also still, question me, during, this very interesting, and useful webinar. I thank you very much for your attention.
I thank you, dear Sofietu, for the perspective we gained from the West. Interestingly enough, an area where you not yet find a bioeconomy strategy or an action plan being prepared or in power, but quite a few activities. And I very much like that you were highlighting the issue of waste, the gold of tomorrow, which we are simply neglecting in many, many parts of the world. And therefore, I found your case study also dealing with very strong socioeconomic aspects in this part of Africa, quite interesting. We now move back to East Africa. And as Filippo Sano said, East African Union has its own strategy. And therefore, I'm extremely happy that the Deputy Executive Secretary of the East African Science and Technology Commission, EAS-TECO, which is an institution of the East African community in charge of projects and programs, is now speaking to us on it. And he is really very, very much an expert in the area of multidisciplinary stakeholdership and coordination, which will be so important if you have so many different countries to get under one head. Dear Fortunate, you have the floor.
Thank you, Christian. I hope you are hearing me.
Yes, we do. And we see the slide.
Yes. Thank you for the opportunity to present the bioeconomy development in East African region in terms of strategies, action plans, and initiatives. And I will zero too much on the bioeconomy strategy. It is one of the second in the world, the regional East African regional strategy on bioeconomy. The first being the European Union, and it has so much of the action plans and initiatives that we shall implement. This strategy is already in implementation. It was approved last year, and we started implementation. And I would like to start with the ESTECO, East African Science and Technology Commission, is one of the specialized institutions of East African community, which has 7 countries, as Philip elaborated. And the Commission's objective is to promote, coordinate the development, management, and application of science, technology, support socioeconomic development, and regional integration. And in this area, we look at the regional science and technology innovation policies, promotion of scientific knowledge, technology advancement and innovation, support of application of science, technology and innovation, and also enhancing stakeholders' engagement.
Sorry, are you showing us another slide, because we still see your first one? Is that correct?
This is the introduction. We can go to the second slide.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. We see it.
Okay, thank you. So at the regional context of bioeconomy, as you know, EAC, East African countries have rich biodiversity, and they have strong bioresources, production bases, and over 30% of the regional GDP is directed attributed to agriculture and other sectors. But there is a raw degree of bioprocessing and value addition to primary produce, and the region also has increasingly supported stronger research and innovation capabilities. However, we have some challenges where we have insufficient development of industrial capacity relevant to the bioeconomy, weak linkages between researchers, research institutions, and industry, obviously without forgetting funding. We also have inadequate business incubation, financing resources, and lack of venture capital by the incubators and innovators. We also have inadequate system for standard setting, certification, accreditation of products, which are limited to trade of bio-based products. So the above context underpins the need for the regional bioeconomy strategy and its implementation. And this strategy builds upon existing national and regional STI policies and is aligned with expressed communities to environmental sustainability. Next slide. So, as Philip said, we have a lot of opportunities in East Africa for bioeconomy development, and it has also a significant potential to support several critical development which deliver the following outcomes. Actually, one is the sustainability of the industrialization, job creation, and green growth, improved food security, improved health, using the biodiversity in the region to develop the cost-effective bio-based production systems for various pharmaceutical products. Next. Another opportunity is creation of the new bio-based products, where we have biomaterials for construction, for the bio-input for agriculture, the enzymes for industry, bio-based feedstocks, and also linking farmers and the bio-entrepreneurs to market opportunities at all the levels for international markets. Also, the opportunity for bioeconomy development in East Africa has created new forms of clean, sustainable, modern bioenergy, such as biofuels for the various different energy sectors, without forgetting the protection of the environment through converting of the waste, through which today threatens the ecosystem, fresher water resources, and also production of useful bio-waste products. Next. So we have 4 thematic areas that this bioeconomy for the regional EAC strategy is based on. The first one is food security and sustainable agriculture. The second is health and well-being. The third is bio-based industry development. And then the last is sustainable energy. So these are the 4 thematic areas of which East African regional bioeconomy strategy is based on. And I will take you one by one, just a summary. The first one being the food security and sustainable agriculture. Next slide. So the strategy has a vision, mission, and overall objective, but most importantly, the specific objectives of which are enabling environment for the achieving of these overall objectives. The first one is the regional and international collaboration, where we share knowledge and building capacity. The second is promoting regional markets for bio-based trade. The third is harmonized regional approach to create structures for the innovations and deployment of technologies. The fourth is the development of national bioeconomy strategies and policy agendas. Now, since we have already developed a regional bioeconomy, now we need to help our partner states, our national member states, to develop their national strategies so that they can be harmonized at the regional level. And lastly is joint monitoring and information sharing of the bioeconomy development, such as the regional bioeconomy observatory. Next. So as I said, I take you back to the strategic thematic areas, which is number one, the food security and sustainable sustainable agriculture. And here we are looking at the implementation of the value addition at food crops, livestock, forestry, marine, and aquatic resources, without forgetting the microbial products, the novel food and feed products, bio-based agriculture inputs, which actually support and enhance sustainable agricultural production through the growth of the bio-based agriculture inputs. Next. The second is health and well-being. And here is to develop a bio-based health sector, contributing towards the healthy population with improved well-being, addressing regional priorities, and also building on indigenous knowledge and practice. And we single out only the three key result areas where we have bio-based pharmaceuticals, bio-based traditional medicine, and bio-based cosmetics and well-being products. Next. The third is the bio-based industry development. And here we are looking at developing industries that stimulate sustainable economic growth and add value to underutilized renewable sources in the region. And we are looking at 5 key result areas. The first one is bio-based and biodegradable packaging materials, bioprocessing enzymes, bio-based construction materials, bio-based textile fibers, and renewable bio-based oils. All these constitute the bio-industry development that we are looking at implementing in the ES region. The last, next slide, is the energy, sustainable energy. And here we are looking at implementing and developing a range of bioenergy products for both household and industrial purposes. And we are looking at using the biomass briquettes and pellets as alternative to charcoal and firewood, production of biogas from organic waste, and advancing biofuels. And this one, we are looking at supporting the research and development of biofuel products from the regenerative materials and the algae. Next. The ESC regional bioeconomy strategy has key strategic enabling actions. One is under the policy. We have policy, we have financing, we have capacity building, and also effective partnership, collaboration, and effective leadership and communication. So these key strategic operating actions, in terms of the policy and regulation development, action is required for policymakers to create enabling a policy environment in East Africa for the bioeconomy. Under financing, we are looking at facilitating access to appropriate financing, support implementation of the priority strategic initiatives that deliver or catalyze the delivery of regional bioeconomy outputs. And under capacity building, we look at building human and infrastructure capacity for research, entrepreneurship, business development required to drive a strong bioeconomy value chain. And under the effective partnership and collaboration, the ESC will provide leadership and support to the development and deployment of well-coordinated function initiative partnership and collaboration at all levels, that is national, regional, continental, and global, to create a thriving and sustainable economic across the East Africa. And the last is the effective leadership and communication, where we are going to build an understanding amongst key actors and the general population of the region on the concept of bioeconomy. Some of the ESC countries have not developed their bioeconomy strategies, and also the concept is still new. So we need to do awareness creation. We need to do, there is a need for its development in the region, and also looking at the contribution to sustainability development goals and combating climate change. Next slide. So this is the last slide where it includes the East African Bioeconomy Strategy Initiative that are under implementation. The first one is the National Bioeconomy Strategies, where we have detailed action that is going to be developed, and these are relevant and appropriate technologies for each country in the region will be developed, and the STECO will be supporting all the 7 countries to develop their national bioeconomy strategies. We have also developed a regional bioeconomy observatory knowledge sharing portal that provides a regional open access repository for bioeconomy data and information. We have, together with the BioInnovate Africa and Stockholm Environmental Institute, organized the bioeconomy regional conferences that has increased awareness of the stakeholders on bioeconomy, enhanced stakeholders' commitment, and strengthened coordination of the bioeconomy initiative in the region. And we have also developed the regional bioeconomy status report with the Stockholm Environmental Institute and BioInnovate Africa, which provides the latest scientific evidence of the status of the bioeconomy in the region. And Philip has already presented this at a large extent. And now we are going to develop the second bioeconomy regional status report that will enhance the collaboration with the partner states and also development of the national bioeconomy and also implementation of the regional bioeconomy strategy for Eastern Africa. And lastly, we also have the EAC regional bioeconomy roundtable policy dialogues. We completed one last year in Tanzania. We are now also planning for the next in Bujumbura in Burundi. And these will bring in scientific sharing of bioeconomy scientific knowledge exchanges in support of evidence-based policy making, especially on standard harmonization for various research for development products of bioeconomy in the region. These are the summary of our initiative and a summary of our bioeconomy strategy in the region, and we look forward to interacting with the rest of the economic commissions, ECOWAS, SADC in the implementation of our strategy. Thank you very much. Back to Christian.
Fortunate. This is really impressive what you show us. And also what Philip Ossano, giving a kind of introduction to what you said. There are only now 4 macroeconomic bioeconomy models in the world. You mentioned the European Union. Then in Europe, it's the Nordic Council around the Baltic and also from Iceland to Finland. Then it's yours. And there's another one. You maybe are very, very important part of the bioeconomy discussion for the future, because it will mean synergies. It will mean learning from each other. It will mean that you exchange people, ideas, maybe goods. And that is bringing us now to the discussion we will have for the next 20 minutes within our colleagues of the panel. The contributions of our panelists, and I ask all panelists now to be present on the screen. The discussion of the panel, and also if Philip Ossano is still there, I would love to see him there. They showed a tremendous diversity on Africa, but also some commonalities. And these commonalities to some extent mean also differences towards other continents. And I want to highlight a few ones. Health. In Europe, health for the bioeconomy doesn't play a big role, only in some member states of the European Union. It does play an enormous role in the United States, in China, and also in Brazil. You practically in all your cases mentioned health with respect to vaccines, but also medical plants, etc. So that's one very important point. The second very important point you mentioned is biomass. And here the question is, to what extent is the bush biomass, which was mentioned several times, is that something different to the biomass you find on other continents? The third point I like to highlight is a negative one. It's a widely noted lack of industry at this moment. So what does that mean? And the fourth point also, to some extent, a lack is there has been hardly any mentioning on biorefining, with the exception of South Africa. So the biorefining facilities are the factories, the biofactories of the future, the industrial complexes of this economy model. You know, the value chains are the autobahns, the biotechnology is the main technology. And then we have the biorefineries or biofoundries, maybe the next generation, to be the industrial complexes of this bioeconomy, of this economy model. So it is to some extent idle to discuss what is in this area very good or in this area bad, etc. I would therefore try to concentrate on two questions. And the first one is, we were discussing in the survey the question of a global hub. My question to all of you is it not necessary, before we talk about that, to ask, should there be an African hub, a Pan-African hub? You have a very good model in East Africa, which might be a model with modalities changed for West Africa. You have a powerful South African activity with Namibia, and maybe others, Swaziland will come. But what is there necessary? Would it be good? Are there advantages to learn from each other to have something like an African hub? And my second question is, to what extent would you, how are you thinking to remedy the present lack of industrial development, which is, you know, very, very difficult to bring up for SME, for funding, etc. How can you there do a kind of compensation? How can you correct that? And the third question to all of you, what do you regard at this moment as the most important constraint, challenge, or deficit? And what can we do to overcome that? So, African hub, who wants to take the floor first?
So I'm happy to start.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So indeed, a Pan-African hub, as it were, would be an initiative to start first as the African continent. And the reason why I say this is because there's, in essence, power in numbers. We've seen, for example, when we look at the manufacturing of active pharmaceutical ingredients or the production of vaccines, the greatest advancements as far as the ability for the African continent to be sustainable, self-sustainable, and self-reliant has come through collaborations, particularly because we enjoy the natural resources on the African continent, but also an existing population, an existing market of over 1 billion people. And number two, a very young population generally. In my view, I think there's opportunity for us to look at our different policies, whether these be regional or country policies, and to find ways through which we can seek harmonization. Ultimately, without this harmonization, the great initiatives such as the African Continental Free Trade Agreement will simply not work without the harmonization of policies and incentives and so forth. It means also that as a continent and a harmonized collaborative continent, we're able to access certain markets through the sharing of information, whether this be access to intellectual property, shared intellectual property, access to skills, the sharing of training opportunities. All of these, in essence, contribute to a much stronger African continent, which is able to compete favorably with the rest of the world. I think I'll stop there for the African hub, Pan-African hub, which I'll certainly support. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'd like to ask our other colleagues as well.
Yes, maybe if I can also come in.
Yes, please, Paulus.
Yes, Christian, that's a really important question. I know we are coming from a different region, but we already seen the strength within the East African by developing their regional bioeconomy strategy, for example, of which different countries have made and found some commonalities. And when we see, for example, different challenges and cause, it's not different from, for example, from the Southern Africa. Obviously, us being, I'm looking at Vuisile talking about the South African bioeconomy initiatives and Namibia developing its own national bioeconomy strategy. And obviously, we are bordered by different countries like Zambia, Zimbabwe, and so other countries. Now, where does it start? I think the first thing where we must start is having some regional discussions, right? And this can come obviously also through, the SADC initiatives, or with these concepts and activities or initiatives happy to develop before it goes to an African Union. So I think it's a regional discussion initially that we first have to discuss, either having also regional strategies. And once the countries, different countries, African countries are at a certain level of understandings and addressing different challenges within bioeconomy sphere, I think that will be coming down through an African Union where we can discuss an African hub. For example, through the new Partnership for African Development, there are very different initiatives that are coming under NEPAD, and perhaps those are some of the discussion that we can start there off. But obviously, first, I think countries have to work together through regional discussions. And once countries are at the same pace of understandings or having common initiatives, then we can take it to an African hub. And I think we have to start now.
Thank you. Safieto, would you, in the West, where bioeconomy is not that far advanced institutionally, let me put it like that, what would you say?
Yes, I think that in the West, pattern of Africa, I think that a transition to a based economy, can accelerate, the kind of growth, in this part, of Africa. In productivity, that is very crucial to improve food security, and also the livelihood, and also to develop the rural, sector, because in West Africa, more than 70% of the population, is rural. And also, I think that the bioeconomy also can, beyond, the food security, it can also draw together, as we were talking, inputs, but also some expertise, but also some skills, from a broader range, involving, these industry, these small and medium, enterprise, through, developing, new energy, renewable energy, green energy, education, also research, science, and also technology, and also environment, and also forestry, land use, land cover, and and enhancing, people life and green cities, in Africa, basically in West Africa. I think it's very, very important to think about, this
Fortunate, what would you say, basing already your experiences on a very good model? We can't hear. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Christian.
We can't hear you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Christian. The Pan-African, I can hear you.
Yeah.
I can hear you. Can you hear me, Christian?
Yes, we can hear you.
The Pan-African African hub is very important. Is very important to us, and looking at the regional economic commissions of Africa, the West, the East, the North, and the South. We need one hub where we have partnership and collaboration, especially for financing the initiatives, the bioeconomy initiatives in the region. Two, when we are together, we attract funding, of which we can remove the challenge of funding for the innovators and incubators in the bio-based industries. And again, looking at communication and awareness of bioeconomy in Africa.
Okay.
It is more pronounced in the Europe, more pronounced in the other parts of the world, but in Africa it is less. It is a new concept, and we need to really sink it to our communities, because the bioproducts are available and they have many sectors like pharmaceuticals, bioenergy, utilization of bio-waste resources. One of the anchorage for all the bioeconomy in the West, North, and East. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You are really pointing out at an important aspect. I'd like to ask Philip. He comes from, or he works for the Swedish Environmental Institute, which was, as I understand, quite helpful in the elaboration of the East African community and union strategy. And I learned, that also for Safieto, for example, the German ministry is helpful in this Pascal. To what extent could there be a cooperation, for example, between Europe, the European Union, with dedicated calls for Africa, for African regions in the capacity building, let me put it like that, for something like that you form also these regions? Is there, from your experience working for one national institution in Europe and then transferring that to Africa, what are your experiences that? What would you recommend with respect to this question of the establishment of regional centers?
Thank you, Christian. I think, of course, from the discussion, one of the key issues that had been raised is this challenge of research and industry linkages. So, of course, from the research perspective, the need to have funding to support research, but not just research, support the engagement with industries. From the EU experience, of course, it is actually the main funding window for the European Union is the Horizon program. And actually starting last year, we have had a dedicated Horizon program targeting Africa as part of promoting EU-Africa cooperation. And one of those funding areas was actually on bioeconomy. So I think what you are asking is already starting to happen. Of course, this provides a good opportunity, of course, also to link to the EU Green Deal, because that's quite important to the European Union region. And I guess linking to the input and submission by colleagues, it's also the case that within Africa, we need to do a better job of articulating the business case for bioeconomy to policymakers. It is quite interesting that when you talk to policymakers around circular economy, for example, we see a very quick and very strong buy-in on circular economy actions at policy level within Africa. We have an African Circular Economy Alliance, but it takes a little bit more to make the case that bioeconomy can help solve some of the major intractable challenges around energy security, around food security, around health and well-being, and so on. So that would require a champion, and I think we look to the East Africa community, for example, given the experience now, to champion this around other regions of Africa as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's finish with this first question. By the way, with respect to this African program and the Commission, what I think the next step should be that within the calls for the CBE, the Circular Bioeconomy Europe, which is the industrial part of that, there one should start to think about calls and not just between the RTDI, etc. points. But that is something else. So I can only encourage you to think about, the next steps in Africa. That means regional centers, working them out, expanding them, and then aiming at a kind of Pan-African hub. My second and third one I would like to combine, and that is the lack of industry, the lack of biorefining activities of these bio-industrial complexes. What can we do to overcome that as soon as possible? Or would you say, no, it's for the foreseeable future, probably not to be implemented, therefore we have to do it in a different way? Who wants to start? Yes, Safieto.
Yes, I think that it's very, very important to tap, into, enabling, this very nice sector, to basically, implement very well the actions that have been undertaken, in the Africa country, basically in West Africa, where I know more. And talking about enablers, I will talk about, this law and regulation and framework. And that will be done for sure by West African people, some small and medium enterprises in these countries, would like to, work hard on that sector, but they don't have very nice law and framework, guiding the activity. Then it becomes very, very difficult. Even though these, framework and law and regulation exist, the implementation on the ground, was a serious problem. So it's not implemented on the ground. So we need that one to be very nice implemented by our policymakers. Then what we need is maybe a very nice understanding, about this sector, by our policymakers. So the researcher and also the scientists may need to make more, noise around this sector, maybe convening some stakeholder meeting where they can well know the opportunities, for that sector, and then they can take, advantage and then create, some priorities for this sector. And also the market environment need to be, well designed for, this circular bioeconomy sector, this circular bioeconomy, actors to be, so that they can, well implement the idea and also produce and market very nicely. And we need also to be connected around the world. We need to learn, to develop our skills. We need to learn more about, this sector in other countries, connect with other African countries, the southern part and also the eastern part, but also in Europe and elsewhere. so that some knowledge, some cross-border knowledge, can be transferred, from one country to another, so that we get all connected and develop more some opportunities, and also enhance, our organized and buoyant sector in Africa, basically.
Anyone else?
Yes, Christian, also just to add, yes, I want to add.
Anyone else who wants to comment? Yeah, yes, please, Paulus.
Yes, I hope you can still hear me. Christian, Africa shares most common problems. And I'm sure that different challenges have to be addressed together. And I'm also thankful to the previous discussion of us having African hubs. As much as regional hubs are very important, I think that also should have to be a start. I'm sure also regional countries share regional problems, and should infrastructures or industries are required, I think when you put every resources in one bag, you are able to achieve a lot. And to me, that's a start of us having either putting some common, identifying different challenges and really putting one resource together and identify a place where, this industry can be built. Those existing ones can be promoted to a regional industry, for example, seed manufacturing. And the second one I think that we can have is most of African continents, if I'm not saying Namibia probably, is that a lot of initiatives are really government driven. And there's really little effort coming from the private industries. And initiatives coming from public-private partnership, I think, should be playing a role key of us encouraging really private industries to contribute to the development of industry manufacturing. The last one, I think, the previous speaker, I think, Safo, she said she have highlighted of learning from other countries. But I think it's also have to be coming from both corporations, so South to South cooperation, also North to South corporations, so that we learn from each other and also the other one and sharing experience, but also having maybe some research calls with different companies, organizations that also share different or same ideas, so that once you establish those one, you can also leverage in terms of resource equipments to establish our industries. Thank you.
Thank you. Time is running out. I would love to have Flora give us 2 or 3 questions from the audience. It is impossible to answer all of them. That's very clear. But please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Christian. So we've had a very interesting feedback from the chat. I want to thank everyone who's put their questions in, and also to thank the panelists who've taken the initiative to answer some of these questions. One of the questions I think hasn't been touched upon is the experience that South Africa has had over the 10 years of their strategy. I think those of us in the room would like to hear, what are the lessons that you have learned in implementing this?
Wonderful question.
Good.
Super. Thank you very much for that question, which I did answer in the chat. But I think for the purposes of everybody, let me just share some of this. So as recently as this year or at the end of last year, our National Advisory Council on Innovation did an audit of the bioeconomy of South Africa. And this is very important for us to have done this audit just to understand in terms of the objectives and aspirations of our bioeconomy. Have we achieved publications, patents, products, and so forth? This is a very interesting audit, colleagues, and I'll certainly recommend that the colleagues get hold of this audit just to understand what has come out of this particular initiative around the bioeconomy. But from my experience and my experience with my colleagues in the space, one of the things we've learned is to take a long-term view on innovation, simply because when we invest in these projects, especially these bio projects, These are what we call long gestational period projects. It's very important that we understand our role in the National System of Innovation as a technology innovation agency, and that is to de-risk these innovations and make them attractive to follow-on funders. What this means is that, when we look at these applications, these opportunities for funding, we certainly consider who might be an appropriate follow-on funder. We bring these individuals, these companies early on in the approval process so that at the end of a project, we do not have a lag between TIA's funding investment and that of the follow-on funder. Partnerships, both internal within the country and external, are very critical. We've certainly developed relationships with our Department of Science and Innovation. One project I'd like to speak about program is the Agriculture Bioinnovation Partnership Program. It is established in 2017-18. In essence, looks at the agriculture sector, food security, productivity, and supporting rural development. Very, very important that we get into these programs and fund these programs, take a programmatic approach as opposed to a individual project approach. Of course, there is space for both of them. Publications, patents, papers, outputs, very, very important, just in terms of the country's stature as far as its outputs is concerned. We've certainly learned as an organization, as a country, to make sure that once these opportunities are funded, we certainly support them through innovation enabling opportunities. For example, where are the innovation hubs? Where are the incubators? Where are the accelerators? And certainly, as far as our investment is concerned, we certainly consider a portion towards enterprise development support. In essence, to support these entrepreneurs, once these innovations have been funded, to ensure that they have the support to get into the market and gain market access, market entry. We've certainly learned regulatory frameworks. Those need to be harmonized within the country. There's nothing as embarrassing as having opposing policy within a country which inhibits the success of these entrepreneurs getting into the market. And so we've had to engage with our regulatory authority, SAPRA, South African Health Products Regulatory Authority, looking at the pharmaceuticals and diagnostic sector to see how we can enable the registration of these innovations such that they can access the market. Of course, the one I'd like to speak about also is what I mentioned earlier on, just in terms of market access, the ability to get government on our side, on the side of local manufacturers, and to instance have government as a key procurer of these innovations to certainly demonstrate market access, because certainly if one is trying to commercialize internationally and unable to demonstrate local uptake of your innovations, you're certainly going to find it very difficult to enter those markets. And of course, finally, global value chains. What we've learned is not to depend completely on global value chains. We've learned certainly with the COVID pandemic that partner countries close up their markets to, in essence, protect their own interests as countries. And so as a country, what we've learned now is to think about self-sustainability and self-reliance as far as manufacturing and technical development is concerned. I think those are the sort of key lessons from the implementation of our bioeconomy strategy. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Well, thank you very, very much. That has been very helpful. And I tell you, the lesson I learned from the example of South Africa is, for all those states in Africa and also in Europe who not yet have their own strategy, do develop one, because it forces you to think about priorities. It forces you to produce something which is visible. It forces you to convince others to get the money for it, etc. So there are only advantages in doing so when you are practicing it. That could be my lesson I learned from you. Now, is there any other question which you find very interesting, dear Flora?
The other question, Christian, that I thought we probably haven't touched on, and I'm afraid in the interest of time might be challenging to address. However, maybe for the panelists, if there's one who has a very quick answer on access and benefit sharing. You all talked about indigenous knowledge, gender, inclusivity.
Oh, very good.
Very good. Really, how do we see that these benefits accrue back to the populations where the innovations come from? So I don't know, this was put in the chat and I just found it very intriguing.
Let me think.
Who
Who
does that
is
go to?
having indigenous knowledge? I think East Africa.
I thought it was Namibia.
Or
I
Namibia.
also-
Namibia, you brought it. Yes, Paulus, you brought it. Indigenous knowledge. I tell you, it's very much mainstream at this moment. We had in the World Bioeconomy Forum 2 years ago this meeting in Pará, in the Amazonia area, and there it broke out. The tremendous knowledge which the Amazonian people have, on pharmaceuticals and aromatics, on biodiversity questions, on any kind of materials you need for health or for pharmaceuticals, and I said, etc. That is something which we are in Europe not that much facing. Maybe the Sami in Finland are still indigenous people, but in many other parts of the world, it is a treasure which has not yet been tapped. So, Paulus.
Yes, Christian, it's a very good question. I'm coming last week from a workshop where we are developing really an indigenous knowledge policy of Namibia. We have realized that the knowledge have been either transferred, to modern technologies. However, the government realized that this knowledge, number one, need to be preserved, and the second one also need, to we are living in the modern world where we are obviously also in a fourth industrial revolution kind of. So I think the first challenge that also the question, that's the main question that came from the workshop. And the workshop, it's like, how and where are the communities going to benefit in any case? And realize these have to be from the policy perspective where government must create an act as such. I know we already have an access and benefit sharing act that came in 2 years back, but then the policy on indigenous knowledge system itself have to be developed so that it really reflects the benefit, how the community is benefiting directly through obviously bioconformity in consents and other different initiatives. I think with that time I can add it there, but it should have to come from the government kind of directives whereby they must set up some policies. We have a policy toward with a focus of developing also an act on indigenous, focusing particularly on indigenous knowledge systems.
Anyone else from you? Because I could imagine that also in West Africa and also middle of Africa, you have this indigenous knowledge which could contribute to the planet. Safietu, do you have any remark?
Oh, yes. I think that I also, notice, some indigenous knowledge that we have to value when I was talking about these case studies. In West Africa, people have always, practiced bioeconomy, on their way. For instance, composting activities, were also, practices in the past with our community, basically, the livestock riser, the mixed, crop livestock, integration practices. These are also some very nice indigenous knowledge, applying bioeconomy, in the past. So we need to value all those things and to integrate all those things and then to involve all these practices when you would like maybe to develop a very nice, bioeconomy sector, basically in Africa, in West Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yuka, you appeared. I think we should and must more or less start to finish. And you permit me a very brief summing up. And contrary to what I expected, frankly speaking, we only covered a very, very small part of the issues, which I did not expect. I thought we would be able to do more. And it is something which I think needs to be repeated, needs to be deepened, needs to be expanded, because things like the role of the retail system and women, the different ethnic questions you have, the relationship between husbandry, plants, the role of the biotechnology now in the upcoming biomanufacturing discussion worldwide by the US, India, and China. You know, what does it mean for Africa? To what extent you need to change your curricula in universities? And what is indeed the role of, let me say, the biotechnology in schools already? That you start not only in university, but have fundamental knowledge on biotechnology in schools. These are only very small parts of that. One thing for me is absolutely clear. There is hardly any other continent where the diversity of challenges, but also potential is so strong than in Africa. And please hurry up. I'm very serious. Hurry up, because these potentials should not be just get lost by whatever developments you have, and we have also on the planet. And the second point, which is my message after what I heard here, there is really a very strong role to be played in cooperation. The North will very strongly benefit from the South. And within the South, you also have very, very interesting potentials. We had in one of our sessions 2 years ago, people from Amazonia, people from Central Africa, and from Indonesia on tropical forests. There is no other model where you can combine and join forces on this topic like that. The North has boreal forests. You know, they also might have Canada, Europe, Russia, but that's difficult at this moment. So thank you very much. For me, I hope very much that the Secretariat people were collecting the many aspects, and we should decide later on, dear Yuka, to what extent some other questions which could not be responded should be given to our panelists, and then the people who have asked them should be contacted. Again, for me, this is just a very interesting beginning, and I can only encourage our African friends to continue. Thank you very much. Yuka, I give you back the floor. We can't hear you.
Now we can hear.
Yes, you can hear.
Okay, here we go. Yeah. Okay, indeed, I also felt that, okay, we only scratched the surface there on this very vast topic what we are having, and okay, and Africa is having so vast resources. So then what was very good to hear that, okay, these, let's say, okay, these emerging, let's say, okay, streams are very close to ones, as Christian mentioned, which are now noted also by the superpowers like US, China, and okay, also India. And it was very good to see that, okay, like this biotechnology, biopharma is so high on agenda, like mentioned, okay, in this East African Community Strategy or East and okay, South African strategy, which is not at all mentioned when it comes to okay, EU strategy. It's missing there. So that was very, very, very good to hear. So I don't repeat all these conclusions, what was very wisely said by Christian. I only like to thank you all speakers. Thanks for your time. Thanks, Philip. Thank you, Vasily, Paulus, Safit, dear Fortune, on excellent presentation, a very comprehensive presentation. We learned a lot, and we have this presentation, and with your consent, we can share this also within the, okay, our followers. And please also remember that, okay, this roundtable was recorded, and you will find that also later on from our YouTube channel. And thanks to Christian, again, very, very professional and profound moderation of this all. And thanks for Flora for co-hosting this event, without forgetting, okay, SEI, EIC, and PAMSA for their support on this occasion. And you know, we carry on this survey, we carry on our journey over the globe. So the next roundtable will be held on 26th of June And on that time, we will focus on Europe, and it will be broadcasted from London. We will do that together with Chatham House, and there we are focusing on financing the bioeconomy. Very, very important topic again. So you are all welcome to listen to the findings of it. And after that, we carry on around the globe, and in September, we are intended to have this roundtable from Asia, where we are also having more on these results on the global hub. And it looks like there is a need to setting up a hub for the bioeconomy. And it was very good to hear your notion of setting up the hub in Africa. And hopefully we can also help with your, let's say, idea by providing sort of continental level results of this survey. So we are ready to share these results together with you. So I would also encourage also all the viewers to participate on this global hub survey. It is open until end of September. So the final result we will then reveal towards end of this year. So stay tuned with these words. I would like to thank you all, and bye-bye for now.